Holy moly, it's been a minute. Yeah, as much as I want to keep this YouTube channel going, it's just tough. I got a lot of things going on, and I'm usually pretty busy. But I want to try to build this up a little bit more. But today I wanted to put together a tutorial about a system called the Axibo. And if this is something that you're just wanting to get to the tutorial part, look down in the comments. I've got a timeline in there, and just go ahead and click right over to the tutorial part, and you can skip all of this. I told myself I was never going to buy another 4-axis kit system. I've got so many of them, and they all pretty much do about the same thing. Some of them have their little bit better in some areas than others. However, this one really caught my attention. It's probably about 4, maybe 5 months ago, I saw a video from Make Art Now. And the guy on there had one of these systems, and he was demonstrating that you could use this for virtual production. And watching that video absolutely blew my mind, because I see so much possibility and so many things that can be done with it. So what does that even mean, virtual production? Well, if you've seen The Mandalorian, if you've seen the behind the scenes episodes, you kind of see what's going on. There's a large LED wall, or in the case of Mandalorian, they have an entire stage that has LED walls surrounding it with LED ceiling, and then a regular floor. And what they'll do is they'll build these sets, but they will use the LEDs to actually fill in the entire background. And it also means if you're filming like reflective surfaces, they're going to reflect the background off of them. Whereas if you're using green screen, it's just going to reflect green. And then when you do the keying out, those lines of green and those warped areas simply just get eliminated, and whatever's in behind gets brought in. So then you have to take efforts to try to arc things and curve things and make things look right. You can avoid all of that and just shoot everything in camera now. And that is pretty darn awesome. So at the heart of this is a system called Unreal Engine. Now, this has been used in order to create all kinds of video games like Fortnite and stuff like that, but it can also just be used to build virtual environments. There is a massive library of very high resolution, three-dimensional scans of various objects that you can just bring into that environment. And the most amazing thing about this is, for most users, this is going to be completely free to use. There's no monthly charge, there's no licensing. You just simply go on to Epic Games, download Unreal, and then you can just start using it. So this is becoming the staple on high-budget Hollywood blockbuster type movies that rely heavily on special effects. Now, for the first time, I actually have the ability to do that in my studio for a fairly low cost. Now, I don't have money for a huge LED volume that's going to cover the entire interior of my studio. What I did do is I just picked up an LED TV for $500. It's a 70-inch screen, and I'm using that as the backdrop. And so far, it works freaking amazing. So you might be able to see how this interests me, especially in my line of work. So most of what I do is botanic time lapse. I'm filming small things and critters and bugs and plants and stuff growing. And what I'll normally have to do is build a set that I try to do everything I can to make it look as convincing as real that this is actually being shot out in the wild. The problem is, a lot of production companies don't want to spend a lot of money on the post work for green screen work and effects that add into the background. So what they want is they want me to build the set large enough that it takes the entire field of view of the camera, that if there is a little bit seen, it's not much, it's very little. Now what this means is, if I'm going to shoot some mushrooms, I'm going to build a set about the size of this welding table. So it's about 3 feet by 3 feet. And I'll bowl it in and, build up the walls, build up the back, and that way I can shoot anywhere within there, and you can see the subject, and you see a backdrop, and everything looks nice and hopefully natural. However, that can sometimes result in a little bit of a claustrophobic feel. The only way to make it really bigger is to cut a lot of that out and do green screen, which then you have to worry about how you're going to match the movement of the camera up to the movement of whatever you're bringing into it. So if the cameramen are going to be going out to the actual on-site and they're going to be filming at location, they need to try to be able to create backdrops that are going to match the camera movements that I'm making. And a lot of my camera motion is adaptive to the plant. Alternatively, you could just build a massive set. However, that gets very expensive and very cumbersome to do. So what this allows me to do is use a TV as the backdrop, so my set can be quite a bit smaller. I can have foreground elements, I can have the subject that I'm filming, a little bit of background, but then after that use an LED TV. And as the camera moves and slides, the parallax, all of it matches up, all of it fits, and all of it works, and it looks like it's actually out in that location doing it. So now instead of when I'm filming something small, I don't have to worry about having a really small or just like a tight enclosed kind of a shoot. I can make it very vast, very expansive. I can make it look huge. And to me, that is really appealing, because that is one of the hardest things, is trying to keep sets from looking claustrophobic at times. The great thing about this is just it gets you the ability to start playing around with this tech for a substantially lower cost. So the way it works is the Axibo has the ability to talk to Unreal and relays the information, the telemetry about its angle, where it is, its location, and the display reacts as accordingly. This is huge, because in the past, if you just want to use like a big screen and just have an image being displayed, or if you just wanted to put like a time lapse up on the screen and film in front of that, the moment you start moving that camera and there's no parallax, it doesn't look right. And also when you're shooting in angles, if you have a big wide photo that you have in the backdrop and you take that camera at an angle, you're going to notice that backdrop is flat. So using this, it will actually present a smaller window within the big frame that it will allow you to move the camera, and it will shift and adjust and skew that image to where it's presented to the camera as a perfect square, even if it's on a flat surface at an angle. And that is how it really kind of sells this effect. Another example of something that I've always wanted to do, you have a lot of these mushroom kits, and I love using these mushroom kits. They're a lot of fun. And I always wanted to do like a little fake commercial kind of thing. What I wanted was one of these things sitting there and having the product growing while the camera is moving, and film it in a kitchen, because that's where they advertise that these things are used. However, for my kind of work to do that time lapse, that literally means I have to build a kitchen. And that is expensive and time consuming and takes up a lot of studio space. So I've never really been able to do it. But using this system, I just went out and I downloaded a kitchen, tweaked it and modified it to make it look the way that I wanted, and then I shot it in front of the screen. And the screen puts the entire kitchen in the backdrop, and then I don't have to worry about building a kitchen. Now, the thing is though, and why I have this tutorial, is when I first looked at this, something didn't sit right with me. The way that they were shooting it and the way that they discussed the integration originally was that you would link it up to a virtual camera in the virtual world, and as you move this camera, the virtual camera moves, and the display would show what the virtual camera sees. Now, when I first saw how they were doing this, I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but something wasn't right. I was looking at the results, they didn't look quite right, and I didn't know what was wrong about it. So while I was waiting for the system to be delivered, I really started digging into Unreal and trying to learn how it works. Now, I had no experience with it at all. And for probably about 3 weeks, I sat there every day, just plowing through tutorials, experimenting around, trying to figure out how this works. And then finally my Axibo arrived, and I had actually figured it out. So the problem with the way that they were doing it on their website with their videos and their tutorials, it simply shows on the screen what the camera in the virtual world sees, and you control the virtual camera by moving this camera. What I eventually learned was a term called nDisplay, and that changed everything, and I knew that was actually the correct way to do it. However, what that does is that creates that window into the virtual world. It creates a sub window within it that matches the field of view of the camera. And as the camera moves around, that window moves around to match it. And that's what actually sells it, because it gives you an area of real world between the virtual and the camera. And that is the proper way to do it. So after a lot of effort and a lot of experimenting around, I started getting good results, and I started being able to get these time lapses that looked like they were shot in other environments. And the more I learn about it, the better they're getting. But their tutorial didn't cover how to do that, so that's what this tutorial is for. That's what it is. It's to actually show you how to use an nDisplay. Now, if you're going out and you're planning on buying 3 or 4 TVs and building multiple cluster nodes, I'm not covering that. I'm going to go over the basics, and what this is going to do is get you in the right place to where you can build upon this knowledge, but it will at least get you started and give you a place to work from. And then you're also going to know the terms about plugins and things like that that you have to use in order to get this to happen. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, everybody, this tutorial time. So right now I'm doing this on 4.27. I haven't moved up to 5.0 just because I was using a laptop for my nDisplay, and 5 turned out to be too much for it to really want to handle. So backing on to 4.27 worked. I'll be working on the display on 5.0 here pretty soon, or I guess rather 5.1 now. But I'll try to get that out ASAP. I am moving over to it because I did replace that laptop with a more capable machine. So the first thing you're going to want to do is already have Unreal installed, and you're going to want to go have already started your project, okay? Once you have your project started, and the reason you need to do that is because you need to install the plugins. So you're going to want to go to your folder that houses all your projects. So in this case, it's usually the default place is going to be under users, your user ID, documents, Unreal projects, and then the name of your project. So in this case, we're doing nDisplay tutorial. And you're going to want to make sure you add a folder called plugins, and in it you're going to want free D live link. You're going to need that in order to enable it for this to work. So go ahead and do that. This is how you get it. And once that's there, you're good to go. So you're going to go ahead and you're going to launch your project. And then I'm going to go to the new level that I had built for this. I wanted to do something that was a little bit more fun than the generic background. So here we are. We got this nice little forest. Everything looks nice and torched. Not really what we want to see, but it's more interesting than your typical blank level. I'm going to go ahead and delete this out. So at this point, I do not have an nDisplay. I do not have a Cine camera. So I'm going to make sure if they're already okay. So make sure that's all gone because we are going to redo this from scratch. So step number one is you need to make sure you have all of the plugins that you need. So you're going to go up to Edit, Plugins, and type in Live Link. And what you're going to want to make sure is you have 3D Live Link enabled. You're going to make sure you have Live Link enabled. You want Live Link over nDisplay enabled. And then you're going to also look up nDisplay. Make sure that is enabled, and switchboard. And make sure switchboard is enabled. And once those are enabled, go ahead and you're going to have to restart your project. Save selected first. Okay, cool. Now all those should be ready to go. So I'm going to go back to my level. And the first thing we're going to do is actually build an nDisplay. So what you're going to do is go into the content browser down here, do a right click, and look for nDisplay. If you don't see it, that means the plugin is not enabled, so go try that again. So click on nDisplay config, you're going to do create new config, and hit finish. And you can rename it if you want, I don't bother, but once you have it up, just double click it, and it's going to load the nDisplay config editor. And I'm going to grab this tab, and I'm just going to drag this over next to my level because I'm going to be bouncing between these a little bit. So when it first starts out, you have your components over here, your render cluster over here, and then your details pane over here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this screen, and I'm just going to build a new one. So I'm going to do add component, go to nDisplay screen, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit my screen to match the size of my 70-inch LED that I am going to be using for a display. And I know that is 154 centimeters across, which means it's going to be 86 centimeters high. We're going to go ahead and just move this up a little bit. And we're going to move this out just a little bit. Now that we have that, we're going to go ahead and build our render cluster. So this is the whatever computer you're going to be using to actually do the rendering for the nDisplay. And what you're going to want to do is put in the IP address of that computer. If you don't know it, you can go into your computer, command, find command prompt, and then type in ipconfig. And you're going to look for your IPv4 address, in which case 10.188.1.120. So, oops, here we go, 10.188.1.120. And I'm also going to change this display because I'm going to be doing this on a 1440p monitor. So hit add, and now we're going to go down to VP0, and we're going to go to view origin. We're going to change that to default viewpoint. We're going to go to type, to mesh, and we're going to do mesh and display screen. Now, just 1 second. What if you have a curved TV? Well, that's where things get a little bit more tricky, and what you're going to need to learn to do is figure out how to build a mesh of that curved TV, okay? Because what I'm doing is I just have a static mesh, which is a 1x1 square, okay? Well, not really 1x1 square, but I went ahead and edited it to the shape that I wanted. But the thing is, if you have an actual LED volume that's a custom size, you're probably just going to have to get that mapped out 3D by an expert. You should probably start looking into that. In this case, I'm just really trying to show you how to get the nDisplay working, and I'm just going to show you how it's going to be done on a 70-inch TV. So that's why ours is shaped like this. If you have a curved screen, that is going to cause an issue with this, and you're going to have to be able to figure out how to build a mesh that matches the dimensions of that. Okay, that's going to be very important. But for this case, we're just going to be using just a nice flat screen. Okay, so we have that. We set it to the correct parameters on VP0, default viewpoint, mesh, and nDisplay screen. And now what we're going to do is we're going to add the camera. And this is an ICVFX camera for in-camera visual effects representation. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to raise this up. I'm going to raise it up 40 because that's just how I do it. That's how my stuff is set up. This is going to be about where the camera is going to be in the studio. Okay? And over here, if you look, you'll see there is this little box within. And as I move the camera, you see that box moves. And if you look, it does offer parallax movement. And that's why we want this. In fact, if I take this and I rotate this, you're going to find that the image, now look how at an angle that is. It's all skewed, right? However, that's what we want to see if we're shooting at a screen that's at an angle. So this is why we want to be doing an nDisplay. This is the proper way to do it. Once I have that done, we're pretty much good to go for this portion. So I'm going to go ahead and hit compile. And then I'm going to move back over to my tutorial. We're just going to drag this out, and we're just going to put it right out here, okay? And I'm even going to flip this thing around 180 degrees because I want to be looking up that hill is where I kind of want to be looking. This is the area I want to be at. So next step we're going to need is we're going to have to add in a cinema camera. So you're going to go over to the Place Actors and type in CINE and grab the cinema camera and just drag it over here. It doesn't really matter where. You're just going to stick it over next to it. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go to that cinema actor and we are going to drag it into the nDisplay and make it a child of the nDisplay. Now what we're going to do is we are going to clear out the location for the cinema camera. And we're going to go ahead and clear out the rotation for the cinema camera. And as you see, it lines up with the gizmo from the nDisplay. However, if you remember, we look at the nDisplay, the default viewpoint, I raise it up by 50 centimeters on the Z. So we're going to go to the cinema camera. I'm going to do the same thing. 50. Right there. So next step we're going to do is we're going to want to go to the nDisplay. We're going to go to the in-camera VFX. And we are going to go to Cinema Camera Actor, and we are going to add that camera we just added. And if you see, we now have that little window within a window. Now, something to keep in mind when you have the cinema camera, there's a lot of options here you should probably go through. First off, film back. I'm going to be using a DSLR because I'm going to be doing time-lapse with this. So I'm going to put in the correct film back. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the current focal length to what I'm using in the studio, which is 15 millimeter. And I'm going to go ahead and change the current aperture to f4 because that's what I'm going to be shooting at. And this is going to give me the correct field of view and representation for my camera. Also, something I notice sometimes if I have this maximized out, sometimes my cursor disappears inside it. So then all of a sudden now I have it all the time. So cool. All right, so here we are. We have the nDisplay. We have the cinema camera. Now what we need to do is we need to link these things up to the Axibo. So the first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to go to Window and Live Link. And that's going to pop this open. If it brings it out as another window like this, you can always just drag it and pop it in here. And what we're going to want to look for is source, and we're going to free live link, and we're going to go from that 20,000. I'm just going to change that to 54321 because that's what we have set on the Axibo, and I'm going to hit OK. And now we have the live link that is listening for the Axibo. So we're going to bring the Axibo in, and you're going to want to be on the virtual production page, and all you're going to need to do is start the live link, and what you're going to see is it's going to connect. There it is. Okay. And also when you do the live link, make sure right here, this is the address you want to use. This is the address of the computer that's going to be rendering it. So it's the same one that we put in when we were building the node. And this is the port that when we built the connection, I said that changed it to 54321. You can probably, I guess you can probably make this whatever you want, but this is kind of what it was default. And then right here you see we have, well, let me clear that out. I don't think we need that. In fact, let's see if anything moved. So we're going to go back to tutorial. And I'm going to go to 0, configure. Okay. Here we are. So now we're connected. But we're not done yet. We need to go back to the camera component. Or so you're going to make sure you connect it on Cinema Camera. And then you're going to add component, and you're going to type in live, and you're going to take live link controller, and then with the live link controller, you're going to connect this to the 255 at 0000.54321 camera. And when that happens, sometimes I see the camera move a little bit, and this is where you can just kind of go in here and make an adjustment. And you'll see you'll get it at the right spot. So let's see, if that was at 0 and it was all the way down, I believe I had that up by 50. Let's go 40. Okay, now we're in the right spot. Everything is here, is good. We have connection, and if I move this, see that? Pretty bitchin'. So you can actually see that window moving, matching the frame of the camera. One thing to keep in mind is if your slider turns out it's not moving the right direction, you want to hit the type button and go from like a vertical to a horizontal. This should be on the X, and I believe this is on the Y axis. So it's not actually vertical; it's forward, backwards, or left and right. But you're gonna want to make that test it. So you're gonna open this up, and you don't see the slider on here because it's not plugged in, so it doesn't add it. So normally there would be another bar down here for slider. Just make sure it's working, moving the way you want. I found that -0.01 for the slide works well for making for the correct distance. I think if you have it at 1, it ends up being moving. I think it's meters instead of centimeters, or it's like 10 meters instead of centimeters. So just play around, make sure that's moving the way that you expect it to. So now we have all of this stuff set up. We have our live link connection. So the next step we're going to want to do is actually go to the switchboard and finish this. But first, this is important. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go to your you're going to go to your live link, and you're going to want to go to presets, and you're going to want to save this as a preset. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and leave it as new live link preset. That's going to be the name of this. And if I look in here, I now have that preset, because what happens is the Unreal shuts down when you're going to be setting up the nDisplay. You shut down Unreal, so it has to have a preset loaded in it to automatically connect to the camera, or else it's not going to move when you try to move it. So what you're going to want to do next is go to Edit, Project Settings, and I'm going to show you something that caused me a lot of problems here. We go to Live Link, and if I just type in Live Link, one word, right? Here it is, default role, default Live Link preset, okay? And you put in default Live Link preset, and you save it. You think you're done, you think you're good, and you're going to get really frustrated and disappointed. So let me show you a little trick. Live Link. if you type it in with a space between live and link, you come back to the preset, but then it also includes the preset save location. It's going to have /game by default. This is not the location, okay? Because if I look at my live link preset, and if I go to show in Explorer, here it is. It's under content, but this is trying to put it under content /game. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to delete that, and now I'm going to go ahead and save it. And when I open this back up, it will automatically connect that live link. And let's try that real quick. You need to make sure that this works. So there it is. There's me. Hi. We're going to load this up. I'm going to go to my tutorial level. And we're going to see if this is already connected. Yep. That's exactly what we need. Okay, so from here, we're good. We have all the stuff set up in here that we need in order to pull off the live link. The next step is what you're going to do is you're going to go to the switchboard. And first you're going to want to launch Switchboard Listener. You're going to want to do Launch Switchboard Listener on login, and then click on Launch Switchboard. If you have not used Switchboard before, this is going to take a little while, okay? And this is the switchboard, but what you're going to do is you're going to see installation progress. So you're just going to need to let that go for a while and see if you and finally install. Once it does install, let's open this up a little bit. We're going to go to delete current config, and we're going to do a new config. And this, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to find your project. It should know where it's at. Okay. So I'm going to do browse, project, engine. Of course, that's what I get. I should have just new config because it already had it on here. I'm going to hit OK. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the level as tutorial, or tutorial, where was it? What did I call it? Tutorial level. That's right. Tutorial level. I'm going to add a device. I'm going to add an nDisplay. And I'm just going to go to populate and see if it finds it. If it doesn't, you're going to have to do browse and locate it. But it should know where it is. So we're just going to go ahead and hit OK. And then I'm going to go ahead and add another device. I'm going to add Unreal. This is editor. Same IP that we've been using on this. So 110.188.1.120. Okay. And we're just going to go ahead and connect both of these. And you should see them green, connect up. Now, what we have here is an editor. And we have the display. What I need to do is I need to shut this down. Make sure it's saved. Save all levels. Save current. Save everything. And shut it down and get it all out of the way. We don't need it. We don't need any of this up anymore. What we do not want, what we do not want is to look over here and see that we have another active session of Unreal Engine running. Because if it does, and it is connected to the Axibo, and the Axibo is going to stay connected to that instance of it, and we want it to connect to the nDisplay. Now we're going to want to go ahead and launch the display, and in order to do that, we're just going to go over here and click on this. And what this is going to do is this is going to set this over everything. So here we are. Now, if I want to move, I can't move anything. I don't have a mouse. If I hit Windows key, my mouse shows up. So I can go over, grab my Axibo, and bring that over. And I'm going to move. And look at this. And you see the camera moving on me. Hi. Here it is. This is it. I don't have it connected to a slider right now. But if there was, there would be a slide down here and you'd be able to move it around as well. So that is how you do it.